I think you have to put the Asia pivot into a larger historical context. It does not mean the United States is abandoning Europe. It does not mean it is in part a rebalancing away from the emphasis on Iraq and Afghanistan that was put in the last decade or so. And in part, it is something that the administration talked about during the campaign on refocusing on Asia, that when history looks back at this time, it is not going to look at this time as the importance being the rise of radical Islam, but it's about the rise of Asia. And I think this is also something that we've seen consistently, not just with this administration, but if you go back to the last administration and redefining the U.S. relationship with India through the Civil Nuclear Agreement, and even prior to that in the Clinton administration in the mid-90s, redefining our relationship with Japan through the Nye Initiative at the time. This is just sort of the southern portion of this, working with Southeast Asian countries in a way that responds not just to concerns about China and the South China Sea, but a variety of strategically important issues in Asia that is a strategic priority. And that's what the administration, I believe, is doing. Yeah, I think in general it's going to play less, foreign policy will play less of an issue than it has in the last two elections, particularly in both 2004 and 2008. After the September 11th attacks, foreign policy went up in importance for a time. I think this is going to be much more of a 1990s style campaign that was back to the old "it's the economy, stupid" line. I think in general the theoretical question is going to be, did the administration leverage U.S. influence sufficiently? Did it do enough to move U.S. influence internationally? Or did it, in other words, punch below its weight? I think that's going to be the principal criticism that any Republican candidate is going to make on the administration. In terms of issues, I think you will certainly see Iran and China be the two principal issues. Iran for the military and nuclear proliferation reasons. China much more about economic issues, particularly on currency and intellectual property issues. Those are no-brainers as election issues. There are three others that might come up depending on what events go on in the ground, I think. One is if there's violence, the increases in Iraq and Afghanistan, that will become more of a campaign issue about whether the administration pulled out too quickly. I think the second is in Pakistan. It's related to Iraq and Afghanistan, or could be on its own if there's a civilian or a change of government in Pakistan, which some people are watching closely. And then third is any number of countries in the Middle East because of the Arab awakenings or the Arab Spring. Right now it's particularly on Syria, and that will continue to be an issue. If there's setbacks in Egypt, if something happens in Libya, it could be any one of a range of issues. And there the central question will again be part of this broader question, did the United States do enough to help those movements or those people in those countries? There are a number of actors, including but not limited to Israel, who benefit from the perception that there is that there might be a military strike, that there is increasing pressure on Iran. That is not to imply that it is only a bluff. It may it is very heartfelt in parts of Israel. I think there's a debate in Israel about whether it does need to do a military strike. In the past 2 months in particular, because of the increased sanctions and the pressure that has been placed on sanctions, you've seen severe effects on the Iranian economy, massive devaluation of the Iranian currency, increases in the interest rate that ran inflationary risks that show that the sanctions are really working, that might forestall the need for any sort of military conflict. And then particularly in the last couple days, when we saw the Iranians announce both that they had mastered the fuel cycle and respond to the letter to go back to the negotiating table at the same time, seemed to give some indication that they might just be posturing with the fuel cycle announcement to help them save face as they were going back to the negotiating table. But we'll have to see what the letter actually says as that becomes public and they go from there. All that's a way of saying that the pressure of sanctions seems to be working, that it may be that negotiations get restarted over the course of the next couple of months. And in the background, you're going to have that question about whether and when a military strike might happen that hopefully will encourage the negotiating route to move and to keep the sanctions pressure on at the same time. So I don't think there's a military conflict that's inevitable, but it is inevitably going to be a campaign issue whether the negotiations restart or whether the pressure gets kicked up significantly.